Smoke still clung to the plains when the fortress gates sealed behind us, the stench of blood and betrayal heavy in the air. I could still hear their voices, my people calling me abomination, witch, monster, as if the words had carved themselves into my bones. Cale walked ahead, his armor slick with gore, his sword dragging across the stones with a sound that made my teeth ache. The demons parted as he passed, bowing low, but their eyes slid to me, gleaming with reverence and hunger alike. They no longer saw me as human. They saw me as something claimed. Inside the war hall, Cale dropped his blade with a clatter and braced both hands against the table, shoulders heaving as if he could not carry his own breath. I lingered at the threshold, trembling, the mark on my wrist still burning in rhythm with the runes carved into his chest. He turned slowly, his golden eyes catching mine, and for the first time I saw the cracks in him, his face hollow with exhaustion, his voice hoarse when he spoke. They will not stop now. Your king cannot risk the truth of the curse being revealed. He will hunt you, hunt us, until the world itself drowns in blood. The words rang like prophecy, and I hated that I believed them. My legs shook as I stepped forward, memories of fire and screams clawing at my throat. They called me a witch, I whispered, each syllable raw. They looked at me and saw a monster. Cale's jaw tightened, his gaze fierce as he closed the distance between us in 2 strides. His hand lifted, fingers brushing my chin with a touch that was far too gentle for the blood still drying on his skin. You are no monster, he said, voice low, almost breaking. You are what they fear, a truth they cannot control. My pulse thundered, the fire inside me answering to his nearness, but beneath it all a hollow ache gnawed at me. I was no longer theirs, no longer human, no longer certain of who I was at all. Only one thing felt undeniable, the bond that tethered me to him, the chain I could neither sever nor escape. And in the silence that followed, with his hand lingering against my skin and the fortress trembling with the hum of the curse, I realized the throne I had once dreamed of returning to was already nothing but ash. The fortress walls echoed with war councils, demons murmuring strategies in guttural tones while Cale stood at their center, a pillar of fire bound in flesh. I sat in the shadows of the chamber, unacknowledged yet impossible to ignore, the mark on my wrist glowing faintly every time his runes flared in answer. I tried to listen to their words, territories, armies, betrayals, but all I could hear was the memory of my people's voices, calling me traitor. Once, I had imagined myself returning to the capital in triumph, my crown restored, my name carved into songs. Now, the thought made bile rise in my throat. Cale dismissed his generals with a wave, and the hall emptied until only we remained. He leaned against the stone table, golden eyes fixed on me with a weight that rooted me in place. They will spread word through every village, he said, voice heavy. You are cursed. You are mine. They will brand you enemy of the crown, and the people will believe it. My chest tightened. So what am I now? If I am no princess, no bride, no weapon, then what is left? He approached slowly, each step measured, the heat of him wrapping around me like a storm I could not outrun. His hand hovered near my face but did not touch, his restraint a torment sharper than claws. You are the truth, he said, his voice low, rough. And truth is the most dangerous thing of all. I wanted to spit back that he was wrong, that I was nothing but a pawn shattered between 2 thrones, but the words caught in my throat. Because when his gaze bore into mine, when the curse thrummed between us like a heartbeat, I felt it, the raw power surging inside me, the fire that no crown could contain. I hated it. I craved it. And God's help me, I craved him too. That night, when I lay awake in my chamber, the fortress groaning with the restless whispers of the curse, I pressed the poison vial against my palm until the glass cut deep. It should have steadied me. It should have reminded me who the enemy was. But all I could see was Cale's eyes burning into me, his voice echoing like a vow I was terrified to believe. Sleep abandoned me. The whispers of the curse pressed against my skull until I fled my chamber, barefoot through silent halls, drawn by the pull I could no longer fight. The mark on my wrist glowed brighter with each step, guiding me down into the cavern where the crystal waited. Its chains writhed like serpents in the gloom, and the runes carved into its surface pulsed in rhythm with my racing heart. I should have turned back, but instead I reached out, trembling, until my palm brushed its surface. The world shattered. Visions poured through me, my kingdom's throne room drenched in shadow, my father on the dais, priests kneeling as they wove chains of light from the blood of prisoners. I saw Cale dragged to his knees, his chest bared, his screams drowned beneath their chants as the runes burned into his flesh. I saw the first bride, a girl in silks of gold, her hand pressed against the crystal, her eyes wide with terror before her body crumbled to ash. My stomach lurched, but I could not pull away. The crystal's voice hissed through me, ancient and merciless. You are mine now. Break or be broken. A hand seized my shoulder and wrenched me back. I gasped, collapsing to the floor, my body shaking with the weight of the vision. Cale loomed above me, his face carved from fury and fear, his runes blazing as though the crystal's hunger had bled into him too. Do not touch it without me, he snarled, his voice a growl that rattled the cavern walls. His hand lingered against my arm, hot and trembling, not from anger but from something he refused to name. It will eat you alive. My breath hitched, the fire still racing in my veins, and I met his gaze with something perilously close to defiance. Maybe it already has. For a moment, silence swallowed us, the chains clinking in the dark like laughter. Cale's jaw clenched, his golden eyes burning with a storm that matched my own. And in that instant, I knew with bone-deep certainty that the curse was not the only force that would consume me. The days that followed felt like walking the edge of a blade. I could not shake the visions the crystal had burned into me, my father cloaked in false piety, Cale writhing beneath chains he had not chosen, the girl before me who had died screaming. Each image carved itself into my mind until I no longer knew where their memories ended and mine began. Cale watched me more closely than ever, his golden eyes shadowed with something that was not just suspicion but fear. Not of me, but for me. He trained me harder, pushing my body until my muscles trembled, forcing me to hold the blade even when my hands bled. Yet every time his fingers closed over mine to correct my grip, the mark on my wrist flared, and the crystal's whispers grew louder. At night I wandered the fortress, the demons bowing their heads as if I were already their queen. They brought me offerings, wine, jewels, blood-forged trinkets, and though I wanted to refuse, I saw the truth in their eyes. They no longer followed Cale. They followed me. The realization sickened me and thrilled me all at once. One night, as stormlight flickered across the spires, Cale found me on the balcony. He stood silent for a long time, the rain tracing down his horns, his face carved with something I had not seen before, resignation. The curse is shifting, he said finally, his voice low. It is drawing more from you than it does from me. My breath caught. Then what happens to you? He stepped closer, his heat pressing into the night air, his jaw tight as he held my gaze. If it abandons me completely, I die. The words should have steadied me, reminded me of the choice I had always meant to make. But instead my chest twisted, sharp and aching, because I realized the thought of losing him hollowed me more than the chains ever could. And Cale must have seen it in my eyes, because his expression cracked, his hand lifting as though to touch my cheek before he stopped himself with a shuddering breath. Do not let it own you, he whispered. If you must kill something, kill me. Not yourself. And then he left me trembling in the rain, the poison vial still untouched in my chamber, its promise now nothing more than a lie. Word reached us at dawn. A demon scout, bloodied and half-broken, stumbled into the hall and fell to his knees before Cale, his voice guttural as he spoke. My kingdom's banners had been sighted, closer than before, far larger. Not an army meant to fight. An army meant to conquer. Cale dismissed the scout, but his gaze lingered on me, unreadable, his golden eyes reflecting the torchlight like molten coins. They mean to end this quickly, he said, his voice low. Not just me. You. The mark on my wrist pulsed as if in answer, a reminder that the curse's chains no longer bound Cale alone. I felt their hunger too, gnawing at me like teeth in the dark. I clenched my fist, hating the tremor in my voice when I asked, what will they do if they take me? His jaw tightened, his silence heavier than words. I knew the truth anyway. They would drag me to the crystal, use me until it devoured me, then crown my ashes as their victory. That night Kale came to me again, though not as general, not as monster, but as a man fraying at the edges. He stood in my chamber with no armor, no sword, only the runes across his skin glowing faintly, marking him as cursed even in the stillness. If they breach the fortress, he said, his voice hoarse, do not let them claim you. Do not let them bind you to their throne. I would rather see this world burn than see you chained to them. The words carved themselves into me, jagged and raw. My hand hovered near the poison vial hidden beneath my gown, the promise I had carried since the beginning. Once it had felt like salvation. Now it felt like betrayal. My breath shook as I met his gaze, and for the first time I let myself whisper the question I had feared since the moment I entered his hall. And what if the curse doesn't want me free? What if it wants me as much as it wants you? His eyes burned hotter, his breath sharp as if the question had struck him like a blade. For a moment he only looked at me, his chest rising hard, his hand trembling at his side. Then he stepped forward, closing the space between us, his voice low enough to shatter me. Then I will fight it. Even if I must fight you. And God's help me, the thought of him fighting me, of us bound together in blood and fire, terrified me less than the thought of him letting me go. The fortress gates rattled with the arrival of spies dragged in chains, their bodies battered, their eyes hollow. Kale questioned them before his war council while I sat in the shadows, unseen yet undeniable. Their words poured like poison into the hall. My father had offered a reward to any man who brought him my head, proof that I was truly destroyed. Gold, land, titles, even my hand in marriage, though I was already branded dead. I should have felt nothing, but fury tore through me, hot and unrelenting. They had erased me from history, buried me in silks and flowers, and now they hunted me like a beast. The demons snarled, their loyalty to Kale clear, but when the spies' eyes slid to me, their terror shifted into awe. They whispered prayers, calling me flame-born, curse-bound queen. Their fear of Kale paled before the reverence in their gaze for me. Kale dismissed them with a flick of his hand, and the hall emptied until only he remained. He turned toward me slowly, his expression unreadable, his runes burning faintly through the fabric of his tunic. Do you see now? He asked, voice low and rough. You are no longer theirs. You are not mine. You are the curse's. My heart hammered, torn between defiance and desire. And if I refuse it? His jaw tightened, his eyes molten as he stepped closer, the heat of him suffocating. Then it will break you until you accept. That is its nature. That is why I begged you not to touch it alone. His hand brushed my wrist, the mark flaring so brightly it cast shadows across the chamber. For an instant, the curse surged through both of us, a current of power so intimate it felt like a kiss pressed to the soul. Kale's breath caught, his restraint splintering, and his hand lingered against mine too long, too dangerously. Then he tore away, his back to me, his voice hoarse. If you are to survive this, you must learn not only to master the curse but to master yourself. Because if you fall, he turned his head just enough for me to see the storm in his golden eyes. I will follow you into ruin. They came for me at night. Human scouts, cloaked in silence, slipping through the fortress walls with the precision of assassins. I woke to the cold press of a blade against my throat, a hand clamped over my mouth before I could cry out. The mark on my wrist flared, the curse howling in my veins, but before I could summon its fire, iron shackles bound my arms, etched with runes designed to smother power. My heart thundered as they dragged me through shadowed halls, past demons slain before they could raise alarm. They moved with purpose, not to kill me here, but to take me. To deliver me back to the kingdom that had buried me alive. We reached the outer gates before the fortress roared awake. Chains of fire erupted from the ground, snapping around the intruders, searing flesh and steel alike. Kale strode through the chaos, his sword a burning arc, his runes blazing brighter than I had ever seen. He cut through men like parchment, fury etched into every line of his body. But when his eyes fell on me, bound and shackled, something broke in his face. He crossed the distance in a storm of fire, tearing the captors apart until the ground ran red. Then he fell to his knees before me, his massive hands trembling as they pried the shackles from my wrists. "Did they hurt you?" His voice was low, guttural, his golden eyes raw with something I could not name. I shook my head, breathless, but when his fingers brushed my skin, the mark blazed so fiercely I gasped. The curse surged between us, binding tighter, feeding on the intimacy of his touch until the chains shimmered in the air around us. Cale pulled back, his chest heaving, his face torn between fury and need. "They will never stop," he growled. "Not until they have you on your knees before their throne, or your corpse rotting at its feet." His hand rose as if to touch my face, then faltered, hovering in the air between us, trembling. And God's help me, I do not know which fate terrifies me more. The attempt on my life changed everything. The fortress sealed itself tighter, demons doubling their patrols, their eyes burning with suspicion at every shadow. Yet I knew the truth, my people would try again. They would not rest until I was dragged back to their throne room, bound and broken, paraded as proof of their power. I tried to tell myself I was ready, that fire still burned in me, that I could unleash the curse and raise the capital to ash if I chose. But each time I remembered the feel of Cale's hands tearing shackles from my wrists, his voice breaking with fear, and the fire inside me twisted into something far more dangerous. At night I found him in the cavern, standing before the crystal as though daring it to consume him. The chains wrapped across his chest glowed in answer, the runes carving deeper into his flesh, and for the first time I saw how close he was to breaking. His head turned when I stepped inside, his golden eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "You should stay away from me," he said, voice low. "The curse grows stronger when we are near." I moved closer anyway, my heart pounding, the mark on my wrist blazing with every step. "And yet you stay near me," I whispered. He laughed bitterly, the sound rough as gravel. "Because I am a fool." I reached for his arm before I could stop myself, my fingers brushing the heat of his skin, the runes sparking against my touch. His breath hitched, his body taut, every line of him trembling as though holding himself back from something he could no longer deny. "If I give in," he rasped, his voice raw with restraint, "I will damn us both." The curse flared between us, a surge of power that wrapped around my soul like chains. And in that moment, as his forehead dropped to mine, heat spilling from him in waves, I knew he was wrong. The real damnation wasn't giving in. It was pretending I didn't already want to. Dawn broke with horns blaring from the ramparts, the sound sharp enough to rattle the fortress stone. I rushed to the balcony, the mark on my wrist already burning, and saw them, my kingdom's banner stretching across the horizon, an army twice the size of the last. But this time they did not march to slaughter. They marched with cages, wagons reinforced with runes to hold something far stronger than iron. They had not come to kill me. They had come to capture me. Cale appeared at my side, his armor half-clasped, his sword strapped to his back. The runes across his chest burned so brightly they cast his face in gold. He looked not at the army but at me, his jaw set, his eyes fierce. "They will use you to end me," he said. "They will break you, twist you, and chain me through your blood. That is what they want." My breath trembled. "And if they succeed?" His hand closed over mine, rough and scorching, the curse flaring between us in a surge that made the balcony quake. "Then I will burn their kingdom to the ground before I let them have you." His voice was low, guttural, terrifying, and God's help me, my pulse raced not with fear but with something perilously close to desire. That night, as the fortress prepared for war, the demons bowed when I passed, not to Cale but to me, murmuring titles in their harsh tongue, bride, queen, savior, curse-born. Each word felt like a chain tightening around my throat, yet I could not deny the heat it stirred in my chest. I was no longer the girl who had been dragged in silks to the altar. I was fire. I was ruin. And when Cale entered my chamber, closing the door behind him with a weight that shook the air, his eyes burning into mine, I knew the truth that terrified me most. That if my kingdom put me in chains, I would not beg for their mercy. I would beg for his. The attack came before dawn. The fortress walls shuddered beneath the weight of catapults, flames streaking across the night sky. The demons rallied to Cale's roar, their chains glowing, dragging them into battle whether they willed it or not. I was pulled with them, the mark on my wrist searing until my veins felt molten, the curse demanding I step into the storm. My people's soldiers surged forward with nets of silver and runes etched on their blades. They did not strike to kill. They struck to bind. Hands seized me in the chaos, dragging me from the courtyard, the weight of shackles biting into my wrists before I could unleash the fire. I fought, but the rune iron smothered my strength, muffling the curse until I was little more than a girl again, gasping, powerless. Kale's roar split the battlefield. He cut through men like paper, the glow of his runes searing so bright he was more flame than flesh. When he saw me bound, his eyes went wild, golden light burning with something more savage than fury. He tore through ranks to reach me, his hand outstretched, but the chains dragged him back, forcing his army with him. Our eyes locked across the battlefield, and in that instant the world stilled. I saw it in his face, the vow he could not speak aloud. He would burn kingdoms, sunder thrones, slaughter gods themselves before he let them take me. But the soldiers dragged me away, their chants deafening, their nets heavy with runes that smothered my fire. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was Kale fighting against his own chains, his body blazing with power, his mouth open in a roar that shook the sky. And in that moment I knew part of me no longer feared being taken. Part of me feared what Kale would become without me.